For more on the stimulus plan, we're joined by the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, Christina Romer, from Washington. Mrs. Chairman, glad you could be with us this morning. I know there's a lot to talk about when you look 1 year back, but I actually want to cast our eyes forward for a moment because your forecasts for GDP growth and unemployment in 2011 and 2012 are considerably better, brighter, let's say, than many private sector forecasts. And I want to ask you what you're counting on that other economists aren't seeing at the moment.
All right. Well, I think the first thing to say is I think we actually are very much in the range of other forecasts. So, for example, if you look at what the members of the Federal Reserve's Federal Open Market Committee, they give a forecast going out, and our numbers are smack in the middle of the range of that. What, of course, we are predicting is what we expect is steady healing. And so we have seen a dramatic turnaround in the economy from GDP falling at almost more than a 6% rate a year ago, and now it's growing at close to a 6% rate. What we're going to be anticipating over 2010 is moderate growth, and then that's picking up. What we are seeing is that the private sector is starting to come back. The Recovery Act has played a tremendous role in helping us to get this turnaround, but of course it can't be the main thing. We know that the private sector is where they create jobs, and we're starting to see that come back, and we anticipate that going forward.
Mrs. Chairman, what's the risk that you endanger the administration's credibility by making predictions that ultimately prove to be too rosy?
Well, I think the first thing, if you go back to a year ago when we made some predictions, certainly on GDP growth, that people said were too rosy. In fact, we turned out to be remarkably accurate. I think actual GDP over 2009 rose by 0.1%. We'd predicted it would rise 0.3%. So we were actually incredibly close. Obviously, the unemployment rate went up more than we had anticipated, or than almost any forecaster had anticipated. Every time we do a forecast, we try to be as accurate as we can. None of us has a crystal ball, but we certainly try to do the best, most honest forecast that we can.
Madam Chairman, the administration says that the legislation helped to create 2 million jobs, yet some polls show that only 6% of Americans see the link. What can you do about what I assume you think is a perception problem?
Well, one of the things that you do find when you talk to Americans and when you do polls is that they're wildly enthusiastic about the pieces of the Recovery Act. They think that tax cut for 95% of working families has been important. The aid to unemployed workers has been important. The state fiscal relief that's kept our teachers and firefighters employed has been important. The investments have been important. People love to see their roads being fixed and their airports being modernized, and the new, smarter electricity grid made. So, I think when you look at the pieces, I think people do support it, do think it's been important. I think it's important to realize this has been the biggest, boldest fiscal stimulus in American history. I wonder if sometimes the overall bill is just so big and so bold, people maybe don't realize what it's been doing until you get down to the pieces, and then they say, oh, I see how that's helping my community.
Madam Chairman, the federal government, the administration has obviously taken bold action, but we're seeing cracks appear elsewhere in America. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, just the latest city to teeter on the edge of bankruptcy. How concerned should we be about the emerging debt crisis in America's states and municipalities?
This recession has taken a toll on all of us, and one of the places certainly that it's shown up is in our state and local governments. When people are unemployed, they don't pay taxes, and that's just devastating for our school districts, for our state governments. That's why the Recovery Act had a big chunk of its spending as aid to the states in order to help them keep essential services going. It's something that the President has supported continuing. We have some numbers for that in our budget, precisely because it is still a problem and something that we think does need to be dealt with.
Madam Chairman, we thank you for your time. Christina Romer joining us there from Washington, D.C.